There's a very clear split in my head, the good memories, and then my dad. We had to be perfect around him. You know, in polygamous households, you know, he'd come by the houses at different nights, you know, stay with different wives, different nights of the week. But anytime he was home with us, we had to be on our best behavior and get to be a kid. You didn't even speak out of turn. If he was holding a family meeting, you immediately got that like sense of dread in your stomach. You're like, oh God, like what's gonna happen? And he would use it to give us an example of to show us a video of like a 9-year-old getting or something like that.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, he'd get all of us together to then expose us to something really, really, really traumatic, and then turn it into a lesson as to why we are weak in his presence, essentially. His way of teaching was through inflicting trauma to make it really stick, like really hard. One of the games he had done was, he's like, okay, pretend you're walking down the road and I'm, you know, a kidnapper or whatever, and I'm gonna try to take you, and like, what, nothing's off the table, do whatever you can to get free. It kind of started as this like fun little, oh, I'm pretending I don't know my dad, then turning into aggressively forcing his daughters in the car, like ripping their shirts.
Oh my
And then it got
gosh.
scary, you know, crying, asking him to stop, like, please, I don't want to play this game anymore, you know. And it was like, do you see how helpless you are? Like, do you see that?
Mine is the only voice.
What have I been doing?
Lay down my autonomy.
After that, it got very dark very quickly.
Hey, my name is Shalise Ansola, and this is Cults to Consciousness, where we discuss leaving high-demand religions or organizations and finding healing and independence through awareness and true individual sovereignty. If you're only listening through the podcast apps and you'd like to see our faces, you can join us over on YouTube at Cults to Consciousness, where you can join in on the conversation, leave those words of encouragement for our guests who are bravely sharing their story. Remember, they are real people, and they do read the comments, and not only does it make them feel seen, heard, and validated, it boosts the algorithm, and so more people can see and hear their stories. So today's guest, she reached out through our Jot form. As a reminder, if you're interested in coming on the show, you can fill out that link. It's in our About section on YouTube, and it just helps us keep all of our potential guests in one place. So she is from the AUB. In fact, her great-grandfather actually founded the AUB. He was the prophet, and he had over 19 wives in her specific family, had 4 mothers technically, and 36 siblings. And we're going to be talking about what happens when you have a high control environment, high control cult or group, in combination with a narcissistic parent and all of the abuses that come with that. So thank you so much for joining us, Janae DeBose.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yes, and you just released a book a week ago.
I did.
As of this recording.
Yes.
That's so exciting, and you're probably freaking out a little bit because it just happened.
Yeah.
How are you feeling? What are the emotions?
I mean, honestly, I was working on the book for a very long time, so it feels good to finally be able to take a breath that it's done. Obviously, backlash is going to happen from family members or other people that were raised the same way that I was, but I'm glad that I got it done. I'm glad that it's on paper, and it's something I can say that I did, regardless.
I love that. We scheduled you immediately after you reached out, so I didn't have a chance to read it, but I'm sure it's incredible. And even just going over some of your story, there were so many things to cover and talk about. So I feel like we're going to get into a lot of it today. But of course, guys, if you're listening and you want to hear more of Janae's story, go check out her book. We'll put the link in the description. So, Janae, let's talk about your grandpa, your great-grandpa.
Yeah.
So for those who aren't familiar, can you just give a little snippet of what the AUB is?
Okay, so the AUB stands for Apostolic United Brethren. Its original founding or beliefs are said to be from Joseph Smith himself. So Joseph Smith originally created the Mormon religion, and then when that time period happened in like the late 1800s, where they released the manifesto stating that they were no longer going to be practicing plural marriage, it kind of split into the groups of who was going to keep doing it and who was not going to. The religion that I was raised in, the AUB, we believed that we were the true Mormons. We were the ones that were living the true religion. So I'm sure there are people in the AUB now that would say, yeah, we've been living it since Joseph Smith originally, because they claim to be the OGs, like the real religion. They're believing it from day one. So, and that they're the only ones that continued Joseph Smith's original work. The only thing was that when the manifesto went out saying that they weren't going to be doing that anymore plural marriages, the president at the time, he wasn't really enforcing it, and he was kind of like, people who were already approved for sealing plural marriages were still doing it, and he wasn't really like pushing down on it. And he was actually encouraging people to like go to Mexico and Canada to like live plural marriage without having to worry about the crackdown from the law. And it wasn't until Heber Grant he became the leader, and he was the one that actually cracked down on it and was like, we're not doing that, we're not doing it anymore, we're not associating with it anymore. Anybody who is practicing it legally or not legally, no matter what country you're in, excommunicated. We're not associating with polygamy anymore, period. And it was at that time that Lauren Woolley decided that or declared himself the prophet of the AUB. I guess I would say that's when FLDS was founded, was when Lauren Woolley was like, I was told by, it was John Taylor. John Taylor, apparently, according to Lauren Woolley, had said that he himself and 4 other people were appointed to continue plural marriage sealings. That was his job in life. He had to continue doing that. So when Heber Grant was like, we're not doing that anymore, Lauren Woolley was like, all right, I gotta take it for myself then. I guess we're gonna set ourselves apart. Lauren Woolley then passed off leadership after he died to J.W. Musser. And J.W. Musser was the one that appointed my grandfather. My great-grandfather. My great-grandfather was really young, and he like hadn't really had that much of a rapport with the priesthood and that sense. And so essentially when J.W. Musser was like, yep, he's going to be the next after I die, there was a lot of backlash. People were like, I don't really think that he should be, like, it should go to this guy who has seniority, like he should be the leader here. That was John Barlow. So after J.W. Musser died, and my great-grandfather, Rulon C. Allred, stepped in to take the place that he had been told that he had to do, John Barlow was like, no, I have seniority. Like, I'm going to take it. I'm going to be the next leader. And so then that was the rift that kind of caused the two separate. John Barlow passed leadership to Rulon Jeffs, which then was passed to Warren Jeffs. And that's like, I'm the 50% that didn't follow John Barlow, because John Barlow's people, they ended up being led by Warren Jeffs, who is now in prison for life because of his afflictions. But that was essentially how our community got founded. And John Barlow took his half of the community, moved to Utah to create their own like establishment. And my great-grandfather took us went up into the mountains in Montana and founded a little compound there. And that's the one that I was raised in.
And you were descended from him through your mom's side?
Correct. Yeah. My mom, it's my mom's grandfather.
What was that like, having that lineage? Because I know growing up in mainstream Mormonism, it was very much like, who were you related to? Like, I have pioneer ancestry, and it's this whole bragging thing. I imagine that being related to the founder and the prophet kind of created this air of seniority or importance or hierarchy, or all eyes on you for you to be an example.
I mean, absolutely. They do claim like that they're not trying to, that there isn't a class system involved, and that we're all just, these true people of God and, whatnot. But there absolutely was a hierarchy system. There was a class system. I would say that prior to my mom's marriage to my father, she was in that higher hierarchy. But unfortunately, my dad kind of dragged her reputation down along with all of ours, his kids.
Why is that?
Because unfortunately, he really did cause such a rift in the religion because of the ways that he parented, that they didn't really want to associate teachings with him. So when you leave the church, or when you leave your husband in the church, you have to be unsealed from your husband. You can't just like get a divorce. So you have to be unsealed by the eyes of the church with the church's permission. And typically this is a very rigorous process, and you have to have evidence of like abuse or evidence of
adultery.
Yeah. And my mom, but she went to them to get released, and they didn't even really question it. They were like, that's fine. Like, we get it. But because apparently from an outside perspective, it was pretty clear that we were being abused, but it wasn't like, I don't even know if I want to say that. It's more of like my dad had established himself as this concerning part of our community. Like, it was kind of like he's kind of one to watch out for.
Yeah. And if it's not clear to the audience already, that is the parent we are mentioning when we talk about narcissistic abuse and narcissistic behavioral traits.
Yes.
So, can you give the audience an idea of who your dad was and how he treated you as kids?
One thing that I think is very unique about the situation with my father is that he was not raised in the religion. He converted when he was in his 30s. He had this manifestation that God had told him that he needed to convert to this religion where he had to have multiple wives in order to be saved and just produce children rapidly. And he, that was God's calling for him. And so he was already in his 30s. He was already married. He already had 8 or 9 children, and he moved to Montana to our little compound, which is not very common. We don't take outsiders. We never did. The only reason that he was accepted was because of the fact that his wife had a distant family member that was part of the AUB. So that's the only reason he was accepted into it, because typically we would say, like, nobody else is allowed, like, it's just us, we're set apart, we're elite. So he, with the full knowledge of a grown man, joined a religion that basically worships men for existing. And it was under that doctrine that he married my mom, who was still a teenager at the time, as his second wife. He used the teachings and control that they give men to his advantage consistently. I mean, yeah, he really shed a bad light. Like, he gave a bad name to AUB members. Like, he was the definite, like, the portrait of, like, what we don't want to look like.
Yeah, so it really illustrates the fact that when you have a community that has doctrine that can have a flip side of the coin that's extremely negative, or that can cause an environment that is ripe for abuse, he accentuated that.
Yeah.
And he exploited that to his advantage.
Very much.
And there was nothing that anyone could really do because it was part of the doctrine or the cultural behavior.
Yeah.
It was just, well, we don't take it that far, or
Exactly.
we don't do things to that extreme, but really he was following the rules technically.
Yeah.
So that's why we wanted to focus in on your story too, is to highlight how even though some communities may live in peace and harmony, if the rules themselves, if the foundation of the group has any sort of dogma or practices that can be used for harm, people will take advantage and exploit that. And that's why we talk about these dark sides of these groups, that someone may have had a completely different experience in it, but because the rules were set up the way that they were, you unfortunately became victim to his exploitation of it.
Absolutely. And I think that there's a lot to be said for other people, members of the community. I mean, like, I know very, very good men that were part of this community that do not deserve the report that my father gave AUB fathers. But because he was a man, right? So not his wives couldn't question him, and his kids couldn't question him. And if the church questioned him, it was kind of like taking away his power as a man, and it was like, and it would look bad. So they kind of just started, like, separating him from the priesthood and from, like, church roles. My mom did leave him. That obviously took a pretty heavy hit on his rapport, because she left him, and then his first wife left him right after, like, because she felt compelled to do so as well, as soon as my mom did.
So he lost 2 of 4 wives.
Correct.
To divorce. Let's paint a picture for the audience of who this man is. I already kind of hate him, sorry,
Me
but
too.
based on the things that you've told me, I'm just like, so
He's a piece of work.
yeah, he was known for using fear to gain what he would think would be respect, but really he was just torturing his children. So in however many words you want to describe the things that your dad would make you guys do, go ahead.
Yeah, so he was a big believer in fear, and it's funny because I was trying to do the prompts, like core memories, and I was like, my childhood is there's a very clear split in my head of the good memories and then my dad, and so and all the ones that he's involved in are pretty like shrouded in fear and anxiety. We had to be perfect around him, in polygamous households. He'd come by the houses at different nights, stay with different wives, different nights of the week. But anytime he was home with us, we had to like be on our best behavior. And so it was not you didn't get to have a personality. You didn't get to be a kid. You didn't even speak out of turn when he was around. Like it was very, very like we were just little grunts that ran around that he had control over. He would hold these, he called them family meetings. And it was, if he was holding a family meeting, you immediately got that like sense of dread in your stomach. You're like, oh God, like what's going to happen? And he would use it to give us an example of like to show us a video of like a 9-year-old getting raped or something like that.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, he'd get all of us together to then expose us to something really, really, really traumatic and then turn it into a lesson as to why we are weak in his presence, essentially. So it was at one point to one of my sisters, he had pulled her up in front of the family at one of the family meetings, held his hand and over her mouth and nose until she was struggling. And then he pulled it away and he's like, do you not understand? Like, do you understand that that's how much you need me in your life as much as you need breath? Like, that is how much you need me to protect you.
What?
And it was, yeah, that was just kind of his way of teaching was through inflicting trauma to make it really stick, like really hard. I don't know if it was intentional.
I think it was intentional.
That was his method. Really traumatic, and then he would teach off of that really traumatic lesson in a negative way that would make it really stick.
So in his mind, he was raising you to be dependent, because I don't even want to say independent. You had mentioned that he was teaching you how to change a tire, yet all of his things go back to this is why you need me, and this is a big scary world that you can't survive in without me.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, yeah, it was every lesson was there's the precursor of fear. I can't say that for the boys as much as I can for the girls. I think for the boys it was definitely different lessons. For the girls it was always like men are going to try to hurt you. That was always the underlying. And that is my dad solely. That is not a religion-based thing. That was just my dad's enforcement, was to teach us that men are dangerous and that men want to hurt us. Not to prepare us only to prepare us, not to teach us how to like defend ourselves or avoid the situations. It was always just like, this is something that will happen to you. And so, yeah, he would, try to teach us life skills, like changing the tire. And he would say that we're down the road from a prison and a rize just broke out and he's coming for us. We had to try to change the tire as fast as we can so that we don't get kidnapped and hurt by this man that just escaped prison. And it was always fear-based. I mean, everything. One time, my sisters asked if they could walk down the road, and he decided that they didn't have a healthy enough dose of fear about like being out on their own without him. And I think I'd have to look at that. I did quote it in my book. I think they were 8, 9 years old. And so he made them play this game. He did that a lot, these games. That's what the tire thing was. That's what this is. It was these games, he would call them, where he would basically traumatize us, like inflict a ton of fear. And then he'd be like, and here's the lesson. And also, wasn't that fun? It was a fun little game. And it was like so normalized that we were like, okay, maybe I'm overreacting. Like maybe this isn't that bad. But one of the games he had done was, he's like, okay, pretend you're walking down the road and I'm, a kidnapper or whatever. And I'm going to try to take you. And like, nothing's off the table. Do whatever you can to get free of me. Like whatever you can do. And it kind of started as this like fun little, game of like, oh, I'm pretending I don't know my dad, then turning into aggressively forcing his daughters in the car like ripping their shirt and like, I mean, full on aggression.
Oh my
And then it got
gosh.
scary, crying, asking him to stop, like, please, I don't want to play this game anymore. But it wasn't, at that point, it was no longer a game. It was inflicting the fact that they would not get away if they were by themselves. So both of them ending up in the car together crying at this point because they're afraid of their father, who is violently wrestled them into the car at 8 or 9 years old. He just, kind of like took this like victory breath, was like, whew, yeah. And then he looked at them and he was like, do you see how helpless you are? Like, do you see that? And it was that level of games. It was always just to teach us that we're helpless.
It's just so clear that he was a predator himself.
Absolutely.
Because it's almost like he's playing out his own sadistic fantasies with his children, knowing full well that he is the person that they should be afraid of out in the wild.
And I think that that's also what kind of drove it home, was that him teaching us that men are dangerous and men will try to hurt you, and that him doing it as a way to kind of like really stick it. So it was, he would say it and teach it and all this, but then he would inflict some kind of trauma by his own behavior, that it was like, it really drove the point home. And it was like, okay, no, yeah, you're right. I understand now. And it stuck very well. It was very, very useful. I mean, what is the word I'm looking for? Very good method. It worked very well for manipulation.
Yeah, I'm sure you were terrified. And it probably created this trauma bond between you of, oh, you're right, I do need you, Dad. But at the same time, you're terrified of him, but you feel like the situation would be worse if he wasn't there. Is that how you felt?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, if we weren't ever allowed to leave the property, because the, religion and everything, we weren't allowed to leave the property, but he always would let us know, like, if we ever did leave the property without him, like, we were going to be kidnapped. It wasn't if, it was when. We would get kidnapped and it would be a thing. So, of course, there was that kind of, like, I only have him to protect me and that's it. And I think that also a big part of it was, like, because he did look at least us girls as, like, very weak individuals that, like, had no power, getting his attention in a positive way was the best feeling you could have, because you wanted so badly to get that approval that, like, you're not just this helpless little girl, or that, like, he loves you so much that he wants to take care of you. He wants to protect you. He wants to make sure that none of those awful things happen to you. And it was like, I mean, it was a complete, like, veil that was put up that, like, again, master manipulator. He was very good at, like, directing our emotions and inflicting enough fear, but then enough comfort to be like, but I can keep you safe. I can do this. And so it was a very, very difficult feelings to navigate, especially as a child when you don't know much else.
Yeah.
It was hard.
It's so typical for a narcissist to inflict pain and then give a little bit of love. But the way that he gives love is so overwhelming that you're just like, oh, wow, yes, I'll just lap it all up. And then it slowly fades. And then when he finally gives just a breadcrumb of the love that he initially gave, it's, I'll take it. I'll take
Absolutely.
it. You feel that love and acceptance. And not only that, but he's your dad. That's something that a child is biologically wired to want and need from their parents. And so for him to do that, knowing the type of trauma he's inflicting and just not caring, because narcissists can't understand empathy or compassion. Yeah, they're incapable of seeing how they affect others. It's just so awful and torturous that you had to go through that.
And it does sound like really, really awful. I definitely didn't see it as that for a really long time, because that's all I knew.
Because it was your normal.
Him being around, you automatically, from a very young age, you're taught by the religion and by his own authority that you are expected to make him happy, like, because he is the head of our household. So it was whatever, you weren't allowed to be sad around him. You weren't allowed to cry. You weren't allowed to be anything except happy and respectful and obedient and submissive. And that was it. So but I didn't know any different. I only knew that I could kind of relax when he wasn't around, and that I could be a kid and I could do things that I wanted to do and I could have my own personality. And I'm like, and it's weird because I'm like, my dad claimed to love us, right? But I'm like, but he never even knew us. He didn't know us at all because I'm like, he wasn't there for any of the bad stuff. He was only there, or if he was, it was as a disciplinary, and that was it. So it's a bit, it seems, obviously, I don't even think I realized that I grew up in an abusive household until I was 19, like a long time afterwards, because I didn't know that there was something to compare it to.
What was your mom's reaction to all of this, especially if she came from a side of the AUB that wasn't this extreme and exploiting of the rules?
So it was really hard for her, I think, because my grandfather, the son of the founder, he committed when my mom was 15, which is a super no-no in the religion, obviously. But we do have genetic depression. We've had genetic testing. We have chronic depression. It runs in the family. And because he was so frowned upon to seek outside medical attention, he believed and he was being told that if he's depressed, if he's sad, if he's having those feelings, it's because his faith isn't strong enough. And so no matter how hard he prayed, he couldn't get that depression to leave. And thinking that he just wasn't worthy or wasn't faithful, didn't have enough faith to get past this, or that God had turned his back on him, and that's why he couldn't get past this really deep sadness. He took his own life when my mom was 15. So I think that she didn't have as strict of a parentage to look up to and to take in. I mean, obviously growing up as the daughter of the son of the founder, her household life was really strict regardless. I mean, on its own. It was the strictest, I would say, that it could be in the religion. And then when her dad died, I think that she was just sort of like, I'm just going to stick to what I know. I'm just going to keep my head down. And my grandmother, her mom, eventually remarried, because that's a big thing too. The other men in the community will come and help these other wives that have been left so that they can still get into heaven and so that they can still be in the afterlife and so their kids can be taken care of. So my mom's stepfather, so my step-grandfather, he just didn't really connect with his kids at all. And so I don't think she had, and then she met my dad when she was 19 and married him. So I don't think she really had anything but being taught that men were superior and that you need to respect them. As a woman, you're raised from birth until marriage to be a wife and to be a submissive wife and to be a mother. And that's it. So if that's all her role is, that's it. So standing up to him wasn't an option. I don't think that she even realized she was in a strict environment because she just chalked it up to like, oh, I've never been married. So I guess maybe this is just something I'm not, this is part of it. And I didn't know because it was also secretive.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think she even knew for a long time, but she didn't know for a long time either that she was being abused or that she was in an abusive household.
And you kids didn't try to run to her and get her to save you from the things your dad was doing?
No, because she wouldn't. And not to say that like it's because she was weak or because she was also a victim of abuse. So not only was there the same fear of my father that we had, but then on top of that, everything about the way she was raised, she was told not to stand up to your husband. So it wasn't, even if we were being hurt or if we were being abused, whatever the case was, she wasn't able to stand up to him, especially given the fact that was such a direct descendant of the founder. She's expected to uphold those beliefs like more than your typical person would. And my dad knew that.
Yeah.
And so he exploited that pretty heavily as well.
Something that really, well, I guess it's because I have my own trauma behind this, but your dad heavily sexualized you and all of the women, and it created such a predatory environment in your household. And I think that's something that we wanted to speak on today about how the environment of the AUB created this intense, sexually repressed culture that, coupled with no sex education, essentially created a predator's paradise for you and your family. So can you talk about the ways in which your father would speak about you as daughters in the house?
Yeah, absolutely. The environment is the perfect place for abuse to grow, just because of so much secrecy, so much don't talk about it, it's taboo type thing. And then my dad, because he knew that there wasn't really anything that anybody could do about it, was very open about his sexual attraction to his children. He would brush up against her when she was 13 and tell her that he had to remind himself that it's his daughter or that he's her father.
Oh my gosh.
And then he would tell us that as women, we unintentionally set eye traps, is what he called them, for men. And I remember being 6 years old, leaving the house with pajamas on, and he told me that I couldn't wear that outside the house because it made men think of me in bed. And I was 6, so I didn't even know what that really meant, except that it was bad. Sorry, it's about to get a little graphic here. In a family meeting, he used my mom's foot to show us why we weren't allowed to wear high heels, and he put it in the shape of like when it's in a heel, and he explained that that's what a woman's foot does when she's having an orgasm, and so that's why we can't wear high heels, because it makes men think of us orgasming.
What?
Same thing, we weren't allowed to wear blue eyeshadow because the veins on our eyelids, you could see those when a woman was orgasming, so it just made men think of that. I mean, it was the littlest of things. Just existing was a sexual eye trap for men. Everything we did. So it was, and he was very determined that we were aware of that.
Well, I think the most disturbing is him telling your mom that he wouldn't change diapers.
Yeah, that was a pretty rough one. And it wasn't just my mom. I mean, it was all of his kids. He wouldn't be left alone with them when they were under, I think, a certain age. I would say, I mean, I'm just guesstimating here. He wouldn't be left alone with a toddler, one of his children, because he didn't want there to be even a chance of speculation that he might hurt them. He refused to help with the baby's diapers or potty training or anything like that because he just, he didn't want to be tempted, and that would be God tempting him and putting him to the test, and this is him trying to avoid that. And it was all God focused in everything he did.
That's so disgusting.
Yeah, very, very disturbing.
Because it's this false sense of nobility.
Exactly.
Of, I'm so godly and worthy that I'm not even going to put myself in the position to potentially sexually abuse my own child. It's like, that's not the flex you think it is. That's disgusting.
Oh, yeah.
And I can't believe you just said that out loud. It's like they have no awareness of this.
None. And I think that's like one of the biggest. My dad's never actually officially been diagnosed with narcissism because he's never gone and gotten any testing naturally. And this is part of the reason that I think he's such a classic diagnosable narcissist, is because everything he did, he claimed it was because God was telling him to, and because he was such a godly man that he had to expose his daughters to this kind of thing, because it was the only way that we could be aware and prepared for what waited up for us in the real world. And it was like he felt, truly, I do believe that he felt like he was conditioning us for what life was going to be like for us. And that's what he felt, because he saw women that way, that he's like, you guys need to be prepared that all men think this way, even though I'm actually just kind of a fucking creep. Sorry, I'm not supposed to curse. I apologize.
You can curse, it's fine. That's exactly right. He was trying to force his children to see the world through his messed up lens.
Absolutely.
Because and he thought that he was being the savior, when in reality he was the issue. He's the problem.
Yeah. The only people that are thinking that way is you. Like, dangly earrings. We weren't allowed to wear like earrings that dangled because it would draw the attention to our breast, because it was like just a line. Nobody thinks like that. I was like, only somebody who is seeing women in such a sexual way, and not only just women, but your own children, your own daughters, in such a sexual way, would think that way. Would think of even coming up with this stuff.
What's interesting is it sounds very much like the IBLP run by Bill Gothard, the Institute in Basic Life Principles, because iTraps was actually something, I don't know if he coined the term,
Maybe.
but that was a big thing that he put into his programs for the children and for their booklets and things. So I wonder if he got a hold of one of those or something, because
Maybe.
it is interesting that he would use that word, or maybe it was floating around those times and it just was more common. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, my dad did go to college for engineering before he converted to the religion, so he was very smart. He was a knowledgeable man, and I think that definitely assisted him in his abilities to be manipulative and to take control and advantage. But he was very knowledgeable. I mean, for a very long time, probably the first 9, 10 years of my life, I believed he was the smartest man on the planet because he convinced me he was. He said that he was. And I believed him, I was like, who am I to question that? Like, I am merely a peasant compared to you. Like, there was such a level of like, I am the authority figure. I'm the smartest person you're ever going to know. Bow down kind of thing. And we did, because we didn't really have another option. So he very well may have read that article or whatever. I'm sorry, what the thing you were referencing.
The IBLP.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and been like, I'm gonna kind of snowball off of that. And because he did do that a lot. And a lot of the religious things that were taught, he just enforced or kind of twisted to enforce his own narratives and then blamed it on the religion.
How did your dad treat your brothers? So on one hand, he's hypersexualizing the girls in the house, and obviously your brothers are paying attention to this and seeing this and probably thinking, oh, that's how men treat women on the outside world, not having a healthy role model of what a man should do and how a man should act. So how did that manifest itself into the home?
Unfortunately, I think, and I love all my brothers so dearly, and I don't really blame all of them for their transgressions. I think that unfortunately, having their sisters sexualized so openly in front of them made them start seeing their sisters in a sexual manner. That being said, I also think that because this isn't just with my household, but in the religion itself, sexuality is so repressed, and you're taught to not talk about it, confront it, acknowledge it. Like it's all very hush hush, very taboo, very much.
Yeah.
Oh no, it's a sin. You don't even think about people that way. If you do, you should be already repenting for your sins. Like, and feeling like there's like a self-policing mechanism of like, if my brain even starts to go in that direction where it's like sexual, or thinking of somebody in a sexual way or a sexual thought or anything, it was automatically like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Like, I need to repent because I should not even be thinking that. So because of that culture itself, and then on top of that, my dad sexualizing the girls in front of him all the time, or in front of them all the time, I think that with that sexual repression mixed with the sexualization of their sisters, it was unfortunately inevitable for them to start abusing the sisters. I mean, there's definitely speculation that it started somewhere, but abuse is also very common in AUB. Very, very common because of the sexual repression. I just think it was unfortunately a lot more prevalent in my... I wouldn't even say that. I would say it was heavily prevalent, but that's because there were so many of us. So it was kind of just passed on and passed on and passed on. There's definitely situations where some of my sisters were abused exponentially worse, way worse, one of the worst like ones that you could be, or to such extents that I myself have not had experienced or anything like that. It's some of them, their abuse was much worse, much worse than others.
That's so awful. And I just want to say abuse is abuse, even if what you experienced was not as severe.
Yeah.
It still deserves the attention and the love and respect to you for having to go through something like that. So, yeah, I'm so sorry that you went through that and
Thank
that
you.
you were just in this household rife with so much abuse around you, the trauma, the fear, the physical abuse, the sexual abuse. That environment is just, you were probably in fight or flight as a child, not realizing that your nervous system was on edge for most of your childhood.
Absolutely. And I think that that's a big talking piece too, is that I do bring this up in the book as well. The cycle of abuse is like incident and then, makeup and then building up tension and then an incident. And it's just like a cycle that just goes around in circles. But I was like, there wasn't really anything except the incident that was happening all the time. So it was like just something bad always. You were not getting consoled afterwards. You were not having that like fixing things moment where you're like, okay, I feel like I'm safe again, or like it was constant bad as far as incidents went. Obviously, I do have great memories with my sisters and like stuff like that from my childhood, but as far as like family is and parentage and like the lifestyle around them, around my parents and stuff like that, it was constant fear and constant incidents. If my dad did I guess when my dad did do something that was really traumatizing or something that was really painful, there was no apology. There was no, even if you're crying, he's like, that's what I wanted to happen. So I'm happy that you got to that conclusion. So there wasn't any that typical abuse cycle where like he would do something really messed up and then console us afterwards so that we were like, okay, we're good. And then it built up again. And then it was just constant all the time.
Was there any place in your house that you had some sort of safety, like a bedroom where you could lock the door, or did you constantly feel exposed and vulnerable?
We weren't allowed to have locks on our doors because he could get you anywhere you were. And I think that if my mom was the person she is now back then, she would have protected us, but she couldn't tell him no. She couldn't tell him not to. And he exploited that quite a bit. He hit my sister so hard one time, she fell off the bed. And like she was sitting on the bed and he had slapped her so hard that she had fallen onto the floor. And my mom was there the whole time. She just sat there and she didn't do anything. And I think it's, again, fight or flight, fight, flight, or freeze, or whatever, the case may be. I don't blame her at all. I think that she was another product of abuse, another product of another victim of that lifestyle. So no, there wasn't a safe space. If he called you, and he would say that all the time, that he wanted to kind of raise his own little army of kids. So like that we all just were like these soldiers that followed him. And so if he wanted you there, you had to be there. There was no hiding. There was no safe place to go to. You just tried to hide amongst, like, try to blend into the background. Like, try to make yourself not noticeable, not to draw his attention in any way. Because if you did, it was bad. It was bad attention, always.
Oh, that just sounds so awful. When it comes to the religion itself, were you invested at all? Did you even have any bandwidth to stop and process the religion that you were supposed to be following?
No, not really. I mean, there was no room to doubt it because you were never taught that doubt was an option. Like, it wasn't, you're so closed off from anything else that, and you're told from a very young age that the world outside of our little mountain compound thing was wicked. They were wicked, and that they didn't have the truth. They didn't have the gospel to make it into the afterlife, and that we should feel bad for them, but that we should keep ourselves apart. The saying, we don't cast our pearls before swine, was used pretty frequently. So like, we had this wonderful, incredible thing, and we're not just going to throw it in front of all these people that don't deserve it and that are wicked and whatever. And then like, it's not secret, it's sacred. That was another big one they used a lot. So the isolation came in many different forms, but teaching us that what we had was so important and so like virtuous and so elite amongst regular people, we had to protect it from the, the awfulness that's in the world. And so I definitely, I think that I wish that it had been a thought to even doubt it, or like I wish it had been even an idea to like not just blindly comply, but it doesn't even cross your mind.
Well, that's why I wondered and why I asked if you even had the bandwidth, because you're such in fight or flight. You don't have time to think about eternity. You're just trying to focus on surviving day to day.
Oh no, yeah, just surviving. And then any type of eternity that was mentioned, it was fear-based as well. But that was more the religion than my father. It was like we were taught to be so afraid of God, like so afraid of him. And I mean that he was judging constantly, and I remember like being young and being like, I just don't understand. Like they keep telling me he's this loving, really caring father deity. Why does he want me to be so afraid of him then? But even just like that thought alone was like, I felt like I had done like murder, like in full on like sinning. I repented. I felt awful about myself for even thinking that. So it was just, I mean, very
Yeah.
self-policing, very manipulative. Anything that came to reality, it was like, I'm not going to question it because God said that, and I don't have any way to prove that he didn't, and I wouldn't even try because that would be sacrilegious. And so it was just a very well-maintained system that kind of covered every angle.
But you were also living that life simultaneously, which is probably why it came across your mind, because you are supposed to be worshiping your father, your literal father, and he was abusive and he
Yeah.
ruled by fear. And that was your life. So it makes sense that you would have that thought even as a child. Watching your mom go through what she went through, and she had 9 children, you said pregnant 10 times, second wife out of 3, you said when you were growing up, and eventually 4. Did you have this looming sense of dread that this is going to be me one day, a plural wife, and I'm just going to have to deal with this myself?
So I actually think I was kind of fortunate in that sense that I did not. I mean, obviously, it wasn't necessarily a sense of dread because it wasn't a choice. So it was like, it's just something that you have to do. That's just something that is part of life. It wasn't like I was dreading it. It was just like, well, this is going to happen eventually. But I also think that I did have a little bit of an advantage being born at the point that I was, because I already had many siblings who had grown up and left, and they were trying really hard to make sure that the ones like myself that were still in it could see that there's a life beyond this. And I do think that my dad, I think one of the things that really came back to kind of bite him was that his toxicity towards his kids caused a lot of them to look outside the church. It was like too much traumatization. So, like with other families, it was like enough to keep them fearing God and fearing the outside world. But my dad, he had overdone it. So it was like, there has to be something better than this. And I think that it pushed a lot of his children away from the religion rather than keeping them kind of in its thrall. So I think I don't think that I ever, I wouldn't say ever. I would say that like the later part of my childhood, probably anytime after like 9 years old, I knew that that wasn't my only option, was to become a plural wife. Like I knew that there was a life outside of this. It was wrong, but it was an option.
And your mom hit a breaking point. And I think it's interesting that she's actually the one who looked into the doctrine. Having been descended from the leader, that's a really big deal. Did she ever talk to you about what it was that made her start to question and look into it?
Yeah, so when she did eventually leave my dad because of, just the way that she was being treated, the way her kids were being treated, it kind of like pulled back this like veil of indoctrination that she had been following for so long, because her entire upbringing was teaching her about the importance of marriage and the importance of being a wife, and how, your husband should fulfill all these things for you and give you such a sense of importance and a sense of purpose. And she felt lied to, like betrayed. She was like, I don't understand. I did everything I was supposed to do. And I'm coming to the realization now that that wasn't true, and that it was fed to me, and it was like trained. I was sculpted to be this, and it just kind of made her like want to look into the foundation of the church, of how my great grandfather had founded it, like what the kind of backstory was. Because I mean, literally, it was never taught how our church was founded. Like, it was because you just didn't get to question it. It was not something that you could even have a conversation about. When she actually did start looking into it, she found out, apparently, according to Lauren Woolley, John Taylor had held this
And John
meeting.
Taylor, just for those who aren't familiar, was the current prophet of the mainstream Mormon church, right?
He was the one that was president prior to the manifesto that was released.
Yeah.
And he had told Lauren Woolley, along with four other men, that it was their responsibility to make sure that plural marriage still carried, and that it was on them, and he gave them the power to seal plural marriages. So then when Heber Grant kind of cracked down on, like, no, we're not doing that at all, Lauren was like, well, I forgot to mention that John Taylor gave me this authority, and I'm going to be the prophet. I'm going to start doing that. Conveniently, all the people that he claimed were at this meeting had either passed away or weren't part of the church anymore. So it was kind of like, that's a bit suspicious that, like, you all of a sudden are claiming that you got this big authority power that's bigger than everything, God, and then you, but all these people that should be a witness can't say anything because they've either passed away or they left. The only person that was still alive was his father, Lauren Woolley's father. And he was confronted by a church member, and he denied it. He said that didn't happen. So I'm like, it was Lauren Woolley's own father that said that Lauren Woolley had made up that whole story, like that didn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
And that was how our church was founded, was by Lauren Woolley saying that he had been given this divine authority to continue this lifestyle. And so just, I mean, looking into where he claimed that, he said that he was there with four other people. Three of them had already passed by the time he said this, and then the other one was his father. And his dad was like, no, it didn't happen. So that just kind of like led her to be like, wait, so there's like no foundation for this at all. And I started looking into mainstream Mormonism after that.
Your mom was with your dad for 20 years, and then she leaves him, and now you are thrust into the, quote, world, into mainstream Mormonism.
Mm-hmm.
How big of a culture shock was that for you?
It's kind of hard to put it into words, because I mean, I guess that it wasn't necessarily a culture shock, because it was never explained to me or to my other siblings around my age what was happening. Like, we didn't understand. We were never told that the religion that we were being a part of was wrong. It was just like one day we were in, the next day we're out, and we're just like expected to adjust. So it was like one minute I was going to the private school on the compound, and then it was public school, 7th grade. And it was just kind of like, I knew that the wicked people that out there were out there. So it was just like, I feel like I had kind of been thrust amongst these undeserving people of the religion. And it felt like I kind of had to hold myself apart and like kind of I had this like sense of sympathy for them. Like, you're not going to make it to heaven. That's rough for you. And I just like remember seeing girls in shorts and like tank tops and being like, oh my God, like, you're a slut. Or like, I didn't actually have that wordage.
Yeah.
But I was like, no, God is definitely looking down at you, disappointed. Like, and it was because I just had that sense of self that was like, I'm basically better than everybody. And then it wasn't until when I started getting more involved with the mainstream Mormon church, that I was like, wait a second, I don't think any of this is real. I think that's kind of what brought me to, I don't think it was a culture shock for a long time. I don't even think it was a culture shock. I knew that there was the wicked world out there. I just felt like I had been put into it.
Yeah.
And so I had to hold myself apart. I had to be better. I had to continue to live the way that God intended me to live. And then it was the fact that when I started going to the mainstream Mormon church, that they were saying the same things up on that steeple that were being said at the church I had just been taken from, where they're like, no, this is the true church. My testimony, God has shown me that this is the true church. And I'm like, yeah, I heard all that already. And now we're here. So like, what do you, and it just all felt so rehearsed. It was all so scripted in my mind. And I was like, there's just, how can both people get up on that podium and cry about how true this religion is, but then denounce the other one? I'm like, it didn't click in my head until then, that I was like, wait, maybe it's all bullshit. Like maybe none of it's true. And that was probably the biggest culture shock at that moment, was like, okay, I don't know if any of this is. And then that was also when my mom and I started getting in disagreements regarding religion. And I still went till I was 18 years old. She made me go every Sunday. But I definitely think that by the time I was 16, I didn't believe in organized religion anymore.
So you had to go for about 5 years before you could make your own choices.
Well, I mean, we were already going to church every Sunday before that. So it was just the same thing, being forced to go every Sunday until I was an adult. It was just a different church.
This world that your dad prepared you for, this world of terror and abuse and race, did that affect you? Did you carry that with you once you were actually outside of the compound and essentially exposed to all of these hypothetical people, predators?
Absolutely. When I first moved away from home, I had living in this little house that was like right down the street from a gas station. Really good part of town. Like it wasn't, anywhere sketchy. But I was 20, so this was like 4 years ago. I was walking to the gas station to grab a snack, and there were these men having a barbecue outside, and I walked past them, and I heard like running steps, and I probably jumped a mile in the air. Heart dropped to my stomach. I like whipped around really fast, like terrified. The guy was like chasing the ball that had rolled away, and I had immediately jumped to the conclusion that he was coming after me. As soon as my back had been turned to him, I was like, "Oh my God, this is it! This is the moment that I've been told will happen to me." And then because of that too, I'm like, I experienced, when I was 16, I was raped by somebody, and I think that that's because of the fact that I was conditioned that was something that was going to happen, that it wasn't that much of a shock to me. And it was kind of like, well, yeah, that's what I've been told. That's what I was told would happen. And it did.
Oh my gosh. Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Me too. I hate that too.
Yeah, just as a woman in society in general, we already have this healthy dose of fear of perpetrators,
general,
of predators, because it does happen.
Mhm.
And it's so awful to say that. I mean, the statistics are through the roof.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's a lot of history to back it up.
I want to say when I looked into it maybe 4 years ago, it was 1 in 3 girls and 1 in 6 boys will be sexually assaulted by the time they're 18. I think those are just by the time they're 18, not to mention once they're out of the house and in the world. And it's so awful that that's part of our reality. And on top of that, having a father who was so sadistic and torturous and made you even more terrified. I guess my heart just goes out to you, because living in that constant state of fear, and then something does happen and you feel like that was just what you
Inevitable.
deserved or what would happen. Yeah, it's not okay. And I guess I just wanted to put words to that and
Thank you so much.
just say it out loud that it's not okay that
Yeah.
happened to you, and I'm sorry. And I hope that you've been able to get some sort of, I don't know if therapy is the right word, or talk to someone about it and work through the mentality of how that wasn't your fault. And just, it's a lot to process, I'm sure.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. I mean, by the time that incident itself had happened, I had already stopped talking to my dad. Like, we had been outside the religion, and so it was. But I think that it wasn't. It was, his. He played a heavy part into it. But I also think that the fact that, like, as women, you weren't really taught to stand up to a man, and that it was kind of like frowned upon. That led to me and other women being in a really vulnerable place, very easily taken
Yeah.
advantage of. And so then when it did happen, unfortunately, it wasn't a shock that it had happened. It was like I was told. It didn't help. I mean, it didn't make it feel less violating. It didn't make it feel less awful and like life altering or traumatic. It seemed like something that was inevitable. It was like, well, this is, and unfortunately, I have a lot of siblings who were that also happened to them because of the fact that you were kind of trained to think that way.
Mm-hmm.
And it's horrific. But we get the help we can. We made it out, so we're trying to. Yeah, I've been in therapy and I've tried to process. I've been processing things that I've dealt with, and that's why part of the main reason I wrote the book was to kind of put into words the process of how that growing up in that lifestyle and how that affected us, like and me, like later in life.
And it's just another side effect, symptom of purity culture, of abstinence only, not teaching boundaries, not teaching consent, not teaching that you have a voice. And this goes for men too. It's not just for the women, for the girls. Obviously, in your situation, you grew up in a very patriarchal society where you could not stand up to men, and that's part of it. But just even outside of that, the purity culture that surrounds girls and doesn't give them any sort of education that can be life-saving, that can help them avoid so much trauma. Because again, as women, we're just conditioned to say yes, yes, be sweet, be calm, don't overreact, don't be emotional, don't, oh, I get so aggravated, especially in this climate right now. It's a scary world to live in right now as women, unfortunately, and especially around reproduction. And so
it really is.
I just feel so strongly about empowering women and helping them understand that they don't owe anybody any part of them, not your body, not your attention, not you even looking over in someone's direction. You don't owe anybody anything, any part of yourself.
Yeah, that's definitely a very. I would say now that I'm a proud feminist. Like I would say that now I'm definitely one of the people that will advocate for women in every situation because of the fact that I think that it's so often that women aren't being advocated for, that situations like my own are happening where like women are being taught that they are just prey. That's it. Like they're taught that they're prey and that their body, they should do everything in their power not to attract male attention because if they do, then it's something they did. It's like there's that mindset is being taught, and there's not enough people out there that are like from the young age teaching women it's not you. If you get raped, it's because he was a rapist or she.
Yes.
Because they had that intention, they had that thought process. And I'm like, you can't sit here and blame me for wearing or blame the victim for wearing shorts or wearing a swimsuit or whatever the case may be. You could walk around naked and that's not giving anybody the right to touch you. And I feel like that's such a unfortunately not taught part of like childhood anymore or at all. It never was. So I'm like, I am very, very big on feminism. I just like equality. I think that the patriarchal like lifestyle is very damaging to that.
And to the men too, because it makes them think that they're helpless creatures, that, oh, I can't look over in a woman's direction who's wearing shorts because it's going to tempt me and I just can't help myself. And it's not the case. And I think that we just need to teach the young boys and the young men just as much as the girls about consent. And this is how you treat a woman, and she is not your property. And teach them how to elevate women instead of trying to control and own them. And that's really what it boils down to is I don't even think feminism is about women need to be in control. It's about
equality,
equalizing the power. Yeah, it's about showing that each sex is equal and have their own strengths and their own weaknesses, and we can work together to be a productive species. It's just respect, just respect each other. Like I could just go on this rant forever.
I know, right? I'm like, I think that it's really, I think there's definitely something like it's misconstrued that feminists are feminine only, like they're only for
Yeah,
women.
or man haters, and that's not the
Yeah, I'm
case.
like that's not the case. I'm a feminist, but I still appreciate the roles that men have in our society. I just want women to be treated the same way. I'm like, if you
Yeah.
Google men's safety gear, you get bucket hats and safety vests. If you Google women's safety gear, it's pepper spray and tasers and I'm like, and that right there is exactly why feminism should be a thing. That's why it should exist because of
Yeah.
the fact that the cultural difference between men and women is so strong because we women are seen as prey. As a feminist, I want the same opportunities. I want to be able to walk around at night without being afraid, and that's, I don't feel like that's asking too much.
Especially with the statistics that we just mentioned. And this is a mentality that you've had to unlearn over years of leaving the religion, leaving mainstream Mormonism. You didn't always think this way. So, how has that transition been for you? Leaving your house, getting out of Mormonism officially, finding your way. It wasn't too long ago, 4 years ago, you said. So, what's that transition been like?
Again, I think it took a long time before I realized that I had been raised in an abusive lifestyle because I just was like, it's just something that happened. It was, kind of just move on. So I think it was, unfortunately, for a little while, very easy for me to fall prey to abusive men. Um, I had my first adult relationship. He ended up hitting me. And that was just because I think that I attracted that type of really toxic type of people or genre of people because of the fact that I was this vulnerable. I saw myself as weak and prey and like this, a target. And so, I did leave. I left him and I've never let another man hit me. So, that's something. But it was kind of an eye-opening moment for me because I was like, I just can't believe that I ever came across as somebody that would let a man do that to me and that I was willing to let a man do that to me. And that makes me so much more afraid than anything. And that was the willpower. That was what gave me that willpower to stand up for myself and to build my confidence and to build my rapport that like I am not somebody that's going to cower down when you raise your hand to me. Like I will fight back. I will scream. I will do whatever the case may be. I'm not just going to sit here and take it. I'm not going to sit here and like let you hit me and be fine with it because the fear of being in that situation where you don't have a choice but to sit there and let them hurt you, that was enough to drive me to fight to be something else. And I think that I'm finally there. I would say obviously I have a lot of growing to do. I'm only 24, so I've got growing, but I'm on my way.
Yeah, I have to add some perspective, and maybe it's just adding language to this, especially for people listening who may be in a similar situation. I just want to make sure you know that it wasn't your fault. Because I know I use the word attracting too, like I attracted negative situations into my life. And I feel like sometimes people may take that as you're blaming yourself or you weren't good enough or you weren't enough in whatever type of way. And so I guess I just wanted to add language to that of you were in a cycle. You have been in fight or flight your entire life in survival mode. And I feel like sometimes what can happen is we go to situations that are familiar, even if they're not comfortable, because familiarity is safety in some cases to our brains. And so I guess just making sure you know it's not your fault and that you just had to be in a place to break out of that type of mentality because of what you were being drawn into.
Yeah.
And that is a really powerful place to be, to have that awareness of, I can't stay in this mindset anymore. I have to break out of the cycle. I have to break free. I have to get to safety and not fall back into the familiar, unsafe position.
Absolutely. And I think that I do appreciate you saying that. What you said is absolutely, that does mean a lot. I do also believe that you teach people how to treat you. And again, when I say attract, it's not necessarily that it's your fault that that person came into your life, but it's that a lot of abusers show signs of being an abuser before they actually abuse you. So, but
Yeah,
because
recognizing the red flags.
yeah,
It's a big
and
deal.
allowing them and excusing them and, just kind of putting them under the rug or like pretending like it didn't happen, you're just reinforcing that idea that it's okay that they're treating you that way. And so then when it does reach a certain point where they have hit you or they have like hurt you mentally or verbally or emotionally, you're like kind of prepared for it in a way. Like your brain is kind of like, it's not the worst he could do. As a confident person, going to allow a man to treat or a person to treat you badly. Like you're gonna be like correcting that behavior. You're like, no, you don't get to talk to me that way. No, you don't get to treat me that way. No, you don't get to, because I know what I deserve. And so it's not necessarily what you attract, but it's about how much you like respect yourself, like how much you like will not tolerate.
No, I totally get that. Something that we talk about a lot is you accept the love you think you deserve.
Absolutely.
And coming out of high control groups and cults, you are literally told you are worthless without this group. If you leave, you are screwed. You're going to hell. Satan will enter you, whatever it is.
Yep.
And so you feel like, you are worthless. And that's something that you have to retrain your brain to understand that your worth is not tied to the church you belong to. Your worth is not tied to wearing or not wearing a tank top or whatever the rules that your group decided were important. You are just inherently worthy as a human being, and you inherently deserve respect as long as you are not hurting anybody else. And so, yeah, that's a hard thing to learn. And I feel like I've had to learn it over years and years and years and years and years of leaving Mormonism. That was probably my biggest lesson coming out of that cult. And yes, I will call it a cult.
I think it is.
I think,
absolutely.
Yes, just learning that, oh my gosh, I'm worthy, because worthiness ends up informing your entire life. So even just, and I've talked about this before, all the way up until, and I still find moments, but trying on a wedding dress and looking in the mirror, and my first thought was, who do you think you are to wear something so beautiful? And I was like, whoa, where did that come from? And I caught myself having that thought, and I was like, F you, Mormonism, for making me feel unworthy, for wearing this stunning, slinky little tank top, low V, curve-hugging dress that I looked amazing in, and I bought it. You better believe I bought it, because I was like, this is the dress that I need.
You're like, and that is how I know.
But it's moments like that that inform your entire life if you have this nagging sense of, I'm not good enough or I'm not worthy enough, and it's so hard to break. So, yeah, I think this part of the conversation is very important for people out there also struggling with this, knowing that it does take years, and just calling an awareness to it is the first biggest step. I think 80% of the battle is understanding your inner thoughts, and not self-policing and not thought policing, but being aware of your thoughts so that you can move forward and heal them where they need to be healed.
There is a big difference between self-correction versus self-awareness,
and self-love.
Exactly. I'm like self-correction of like, I mean, that's something I still struggle with self-correction. It's something I still try to push past. Like if I say something in a crowd, I immediately would be like, oh my God, did I sound really dumb? I sounded so stupid. Like I shouldn't have said that. Or like, oh my God, the way I picked that up was weird. People probably think I'm really weird. Oh my God, I shouldn't have done it that way. Immediate self-correction of like, how do I make myself smaller? How do I make it so that there isn't as much attention on me for doing something just normal? But because of the fact that I'm the self-awareness, it can be very easily, and the self-love can be very overpowered with the self-correction. And I think it does take a lot of self-awareness to be like, even if you did pick that up weird, even if you did say something that was weird, even if what you did say was really awkward or whatever, who cares? Like, you can't care. You have to be okay with being you. You have to be okay with, and being aware that you're okay with being you. You have to be like, okay, cool, I said something weird. Like, if you guys think it's weird, that's not my problem. That's your problem. And letting that blame or that shame that you would typically put on yourself, if they feel that way, let them feel that way, because I didn't do anything besides be myself.
Being okay with taking up space. is another huge one.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Aside from learning that you are worthy, giving yourself the love that you deserve, but also being okay with existing in the world as you are. So what are the ways that you have been able to find peace and joy and happiness existing in this world?
Yeah, and I think it's just like learning that existing is not taxing anybody that is worth keeping around. It's not causing a hindrance on people they're going to benefit your life. And if your presence, your living is taxing somebody, is taking away from somebody else's quality of life, you need to separate yourself from that person. And that did take me a long time to learn. And I'm glad that I did eventually. But I have lots of friendships that I can look, not even just with men, but like with women as well, where I definitely let myself be kind of pushed back into a corner and be the background character and be just like this person that, I took critiques and they'd comment on my hair or something, and I would immediately just like feel this shame and doubt about myself and be like, oh my God, do I look like I would have all the confidence feeling like so good about how I look, and somebody would be like, what are you wearing? And immediately I would be like, oh my God, I look ridiculous. I look ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
And so it took a long time for me to be able to stop doing that and to realize if they think that I look silly, that's not my choice. That is something they thought. That is their thoughts. Those I don't have control over that. And it's really, really hard to get to that point. But once you do, it's a very liberating feeling.
Definitely. So you've learned a lot of lessons in a short period of time, especially at a young age. I feel like a lot of people take years and don't learn that until later in life. So kudos to you for doing the work. What makes you happy these days? What are you doing? You just released a book, so you can take a breath.
Yeah.
So what are your hobbies? What brings you joy?
So right now I work in research medicine. We do clinical studies on obesity medicine. So that's kind of what my profession is, just because obesity medicine is very new still. And so we're kind of just trying to get as much knowledge about it as we can. So that's what I do. I work from home. So I just work from my laptop with my little dog. And we hang out, and I have a pool, and we go out to the pool, and I pretty much don't leave the house. But occasionally I will go line dancing with my roommate. We have fun doing that sometimes.
That's awesome.
I have enough fulfillment with my job and with my dog that I feel I'm doing okay for myself.
I love that your home is your safe space now.
Yes, it is. It really is.
And you have a little companion.
I do.
What kind of dog is it?
She's a Shorkie.
A Shorkie? What is
Yeah.
that?
A Shih Tzu Yorkie.
Oh my gosh, so cute. Wait, is she around? I want to see her.
I was gonna say, I can grab her. My roommate's watching her.
Go get her. I want to see the Shorkie.
This is Pookie.
Stop. Look at that.
Hi.
Look at that face. Oh my god. She looks like a little, is it an Ewok? Or
Yes.
Little,
People
or
say that or Chewbacca. Yeah, it's a big one. Chewbacca's a
Yeah.
big one. Say hi.
Oh my goodness, little Pookie. What a cutie.
She has a lot of tricks. She's a very smart girl.
Aw. So, okay, I need your Linda Listen moment. Do you have a Linda Listen for me?
I kind of just wanted to, I do say this at the end of my book as well. I'm like, I think that if there is anybody, any religion, any teaching that is based on making you afraid, then it's not something worth listening to or following.
Then you might be in a cult.
It might be in a cult. Yeah. It's like if fear and control is the only way that they get you to stay, then that's because that might be a bit of an incentive that maybe you shouldn't stay.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And those are the hardest ones to get out of because of the fear. Because you're like, wait, if I leave, am I really going to go to hell? Am I really going to be cursed? Am I really going to this, that, and the other? But understanding that fear is on purpose and it is a tool to keep you in. It's a tactic to keep you in. Once you realize they're doing it to control you, it's usually a little bit easier to release it. It takes a while, but it can be easier once you recognize it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's easier to come to terms with maybe it's not real. that fear that they're teaching you is not factual. It's just a tool.
A tactic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, this has been a great conversation. Thank you so much for coming on and being
Yes, I
willing to
really enjoyed
share.
it.
Yeah,
Thanks.
so it wasn't as bad as you thought. I know it was
No,
a
I
little
was a little
nerve-wracking at
nervous,
first.
but yeah, it's just never gone that
You
anything
did
like
great.
this. So
So how can people find your book? What are your social media handles? How do people find you?
it's mostly just all my social media handles are just my first name and my last name, Janae. My book is available on Amazon for the Kindle paperback hardcover, as well as Barnes and Nobles. I have a author blog on Goodreads under my name as well. It's still pretty new, so have a little grace, but I'm still figuring it out a little bit. But yeah, overall, it's just if you look up my name in the book title in the Cult Next Door, shouldn't have any problem finding it. It should pop up, hopefully.
Amazing. Well, do you have any other final thoughts before we go?
No, I just thank you so much for the opportunity. I think that this was, I think this was a very constructive conversation, and I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, I agree. We had a lot to talk about. I feel like I could rant with you for hours
For a very long
about the state of the
time.
world and
Yes.
and how I hate it. No, I'm
Feminism.
just kidding.
Yeah, oh my God. I had put that on my author page because I was like I really want to like say that I'm patriotic and that I do love my country. But so I put in there like even though I'm not a big fan of the way things are going now, and then I said gestures vaguely to everything because it's just terrible at the moment. I'm still very patriotic.
Yeah, we're doing our best. I
I
think we're all doing
know.
our best
I'm
right
like,
now.
I hope we can come back from this somehow, some way.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
All we can do is try to lift each other up. That's all we can do.
Amen. Amen, sister. Well, guys, thank you so much for watching. Leave those words of encouragement for Janae down below in the comments. They mean so much to us. They boost the algorithm. It's the best way to support the podcast and our guests. Of course, go check out her book, her social media. All of the links are in the description. If you want to support the podcast even further, liking and subscribing. We do have a Patreon, patreon.com/cults2consciousness. We have some merch at cults2consciousness.com. If you want to vacation with us to Mexico at the end of October, we have, at the time of this recording, one early bird spot remaining, one discounted spot. And if you like this video, I'll link 2 more down here below. We have covered AUB in a couple other recent videos, so check it out. And until next time, follow your highest excitement, be conscious, and be well.